in Mago Reddit. Today's story is
My mother-in-law called her ex-daughter-in-law by mistake in front of me for 6 months, until I exploded in the middle of a family dinner and told her the whole truth. Her reaction destroyed everything. A couple of days ago, I lost my temper during a dinner party hosted by my fiancé's mother. Let's call her Sharon. She has never accepted me and doesn't bother to hide it. Despite the fact that my fiancé has been divorced for 6 years, Sharon can't seem to get over his ex-wife. The most ironic thing is that this woman was terrible to him and ended up being unfaithful to one of my fiancé's wealthiest friends, but Sharon insists on blaming her own son for the failure of the marriage. Sharon was the one who introduced them, as his ex-wife's mother was a close friend of hers. She practically arranged the marriage when he was just 25 years old, after a relationship that lasted only a year. For the next 5 years, that woman made my fiancé's life a living hell. Sharon knows this story perfectly well, but even so, she is convinced that it was his fault that she left him. She has even said on occasion that she doesn't blame the ex for having upgraded to someone better to make her life easier. And why do I consider this idea of updating to be absurd? That woman never worked a day in her life. She was always a housewife and, even so, she hired a domestic worker, so she didn't really do anything around the house. She also had a serious problem with compulsive shopping, almost to the level of addiction. My fiancé told me how she would make a scene every time he refused to allow her to spend money freely. Now that problem has disappeared for her, as the man she ended up with is much wealthier, thanks to his family inheritance. She was clearly a gold digger, to put it one way. She initiated the divorce, and just a couple of months after it was finalized, she married my fiancé's friend, and they moved to another city. Since then, neither she nor her mother have maintained contact with Sharon, which is completely natural. What isn't natural is Sharon's obsession with them and her disregard for her own son's feelings. It's been 6 years since then. It took a long time and a lot of therapy for my fiancé to get over what happened, because his life during those 5 years of marriage was really difficult. Then, 2 years ago, we met through work colleagues and started going out. At the beginning of this year, we got engaged. I had already met his mother before. I felt that she didn't like me, but since our engagement, her attitude has worsened considerably. Before, at least she was just cold and tried to ignore me. Now she constantly attacks and criticizes me. I have tolerated it out of respect for my fiancé, but a few days ago I finally exploded. In the last few months, after we announced our engagement, she has developed an incredibly annoying habit. She calls me by the name of my fiancé's ex-wife, and then pretends to correct herself by saying my name. I know perfectly well that it is not a genuine mistake. She does it deliberately, and I notice her expression of satisfaction every time she does it. It is truly mean. I didn't want to confront her, but during dinner she became unbearable. When she did it one more time, I decided to tell her it wasn't funny. I made it clear to her that I knew she was doing it intentionally, and I confronted her about her behavior. I also pointed out to her how ironic it was that she kept mentioning that woman's name, knowing how much she had hurt her own son. This only showed how little she cared, and I told her that if it were up to me, I would make sure that my fiancé cut off all contact with her because she clearly didn't deserve a son like him who had stood by her despite how she had treated him all these years. In front of all the guests at the table, I mentioned how she was as problematic as the ex-wife, as she had played a crucial role in introducing that woman into her son's life, ruining it for 5 years. And instead of being ashamed and apologizing, she took pride in it as if it were normal. I told her that my fiancé's ex would have been the perfect company for her, and that she didn't deserve a son as good as my fiancé or a daughter-in-law like me. I got up and left, and my fiancé followed me. We went back home, and I thought he would be upset with me, but he told me he was really happy that I had finally stood up to her because he was obliged to put up with her because she was his mother, but I didn't have that obligation. So he was glad that I had defended myself. It's been a couple of days since then, and Sharon keeps sending messages and calling my fiancé's phone, demanding that I apologize because she felt humiliated and disrespected when I made that speech. She insists that she never meant any harm, but because of the way I presented it, she felt I was deliberately making her look like the villain in her own son's life. She has been shedding crocodile tears, but I feel no compassion for her. Am I the bad guy for having exploded at my mother-in-law in front of all her dinner guests? Update 1. Hello everyone. Many people have questioned why exactly my fiancé has maintained contact with his mother for so long, when she clearly does not respect him or his boundaries and shows no consideration for him. Several comments have been quite harsh on this matter, calling him a doormat, a coward without character, and other similar epithets. Let me clarify that if he were like that, I wouldn't be with him in the first place. He has his own reasons for maintaining this relationship. First, my fiancé's father passed away when he was just 2 years old. After that, it was his mother who raised him alone. She never remarried and hardly went out with other people. So now her son is all she has. My fiancé's grandparents died a long time ago, and his mother does not have a good relationship with the rest of the family, so she is quite alone. She doesn't have many friends either, largely because of her negative attitude towards everything. My fiancé has confessed to me that he has considered cutting ties with his mother several times, but he always finds it extremely difficult to do so. He cannot take that step because he recognizes that she sacrificed a lot for him, whether in his career, his personal life, or in other aspects. He feels that he owes her practically everything he has, and I can perfectly understand why he finds it difficult to distance himself, no matter how complicated it is to maintain a cordial relationship with her. Even after this particular incident, she has told me that she will try to reconcile with her, but that I have no obligation to be kind. I don't owe her anything, and I don't have to tolerate her behavior. If I were in his place, I would probably act the same way because she is not young. She is almost 65 and already suffers from several ailments. She has been asthmatic since she was a child, pre-diabetic for the last few years, has heart problems, and was recently diagnosed with arthritis. Naturally, we have to consider all this. Although she has enough money to support herself, she has worked hard for it, and could hire a nurse. It is not the same as having her own son visit her every weekend. She is not always unpleasant towards him. Sometimes she is exceptionally kind and goes out of her way to do things for her son, but there are times when she is absolutely unbearable. They have a complicated and somewhat toxic relationship, but I can understand why she has not broken the bond yet. If I were in his place, and my mother behaved like that, I would also find it difficult to cut off the relationship. Anyway, this is about my fiancé and his mother, and I hope these explanations will help people refrain from making hurtful comments about him. You don't know all the circumstances, and this isn't really about him and my mother-in-law. It's about me and Sharon. On that note, I see that the majority opinion is that I have no reason to feel guilty, and that in any case, she is the one who should apologize for her behavior over so many months. But I know she won't, and I'm not naive enough to expect it. The only thing I'm going to do now is to stay completely away from her. My fiancé has assured me that I don't owe her anything and that I don't have to restrain myself in her presence. Until now, I had only done it for him because I know that she is not a confrontational person, especially with her mother. She hates arguing with her. It's not that I haven't tried before. Believe me, I have, but she refuses to change. She's always been like that, and I'm sure that being a single mother for so many years hasn't helped her. She's not going to change. She'll continue to be grumpy, self-centered, and always believe she's right about everything. She can continue like this if she wants, but I don't have to tolerate it. If she feels ashamed about what happened at the party, she'd do well to remember it in the future and not seek unnecessary confrontations with me. I think what happened was bound to happen at some point. It's good that there is someone to set limits. Now, I don't know what will happen because in the last few days, after trying to talk to my fiancé to get him to make me apologize, she kind of gave up when he told her he wouldn't do that. We haven't heard from her for about 3 days. Tomorrow is Saturday, and my fiancé has said he will visit her to talk about all this and, if possible, get her to apologize to me. If it works, which I doubt, everything will be fine, but I will still keep my distance. Update 2. Well, my fiancé visited his mother this morning and came back a couple of hours ago to tell me what happened. Initially, she refused to even let him in, telling him that after what had happened, she didn't want anything to do with him until he broke up with me or I apologized. She was firm in her position, and after a few seconds, he was about to leave, but then she finally opened the door and began to complain about how she couldn't believe he was really willing to leave her. She started to cry, saying that she had raised him alone, that she had sacrificed so much for him, And now he couldn't even get me to apologize for having insulted her in front of all his guests. She accused him of prioritizing me over her and said she couldn't believe I was manipulating him like that, which is absurd because she is the one who has always tried to control him. My fiancé defended me, which made her even more furious. All she wanted was for him to simply say that she was right and make me apologize. She wasn't willing to listen to any reasoning, so they argued for a while she remained at the entrance to his house. She hadn't even bothered to invite him in. After a while, he got very angry and said that if she was going to behave like that, they wouldn't get anywhere and he was about to leave. But then she invited him in and suddenly started acting normally. She said she really wanted to make up with him because she knew that, at the end of the day, he was all she had. And no matter how much she got annoyed or angry with him, she still loved him and didn't want him to leave upset. This is a pattern they tend to follow, and once again my fiancé came in. Once they were seated, his mother began to tell him that she had always wanted the best for him, and, naturally, she had been very disappointed when he ended up divorcing his ex, because she was sure that relationship would have worked out. But that didn't mean she didn't care about him. She admitted that in moments of anger she might have said hurtful things, but she wanted him to know that she didn't mean them. By this she was obviously referring to the times she had insinuated that it was his fault that her ex had cheated on her and run off with his richer friend. As always, my fiancé replied that it didn't matter whether she had said it in a moment of anger or not. The problem was that she kept repeating it every time she was angry with him, and that wasn't right. It was not acceptable for her to say things like that, especially because they made him feel terrible. Despite that, he continued to visit her because he wanted to be a good son, just as she had been a good mother in the past. But all he asked was that she not make it so difficult for everyone to be there for her. That's why he wanted her to apologize to me, because her behavior towards me in recent months was not acceptable either. Unlike him, I am not obliged to look after her. I don't have to visit her every weekend and try to reconcile no matter how annoying she is. I am not him. She didn't raise me, and she hasn't done anything for me that makes me feel permanently indebted, so she needs to understand that. If she wants to avoid problems in the future, she should apologize to me. But of course, he met with resistance because his mother flatly refused to apologize. She said she would gladly apologize to him, but after how I had behaved, embarrassing and disrespecting her in front of so many people, there was no way she would apologize to me. She insisted that I had acted much worse, and that, although she may have been a little cold and unpleasant to me, that did not justify my behavior. She would not talk to me unless I apologized first. He tried to reason with her as best he could, but she simply refused to give in. Finally, in frustration, he told her that in the future, if she wasn't invited to the wedding or if she wasn't allowed to be part of her grandchildren's lives, she would know that it was her own fault. She had the opportunity to make things right with me, and she refused because of her pride and narcissism, because she wouldn't admit that she had made a mistake and had been horrible to me. In the future, she would have no one to blame but herself. And that finally seemed to get through to her, I guess the mention of grandchildren in the wedding. During my fiancé's previous marriage, when they started having problems, his mother had suggested that they start trying for children so that all their problems would go away. I guess she thought they would have new problems to face. At the time, he had tried to raise the idea with his ex-wife, but she didn't agree. She said she was too young and wasn't interested in being a mother before she was 30, so it never happened. My fiancé is aware that his mother has always wanted grandchildren. I'm 31 and he's 37, so we still have time and I definitely plan to get pregnant in the next few years. As for the wedding, I had already decided that if this woman did not apologize to me, there would be no place for her at the ceremony. That day is supposed to be full of happiness, meant to celebrate the couple, and if she can't be happy for us, if she can't respect us, then she has no place at the wedding. I guess that made her think. After a while, she told my fiancé that she would think about it, but that she needed time to process everything because she had been very hurt by my behavior. She acknowledged that she had also been a bit unpleasant to me, but not as much as what I had done, so she needed time before deciding what to do. In the meantime, it would be completely okay with her to stay away from me. I'm totally fine with that too, because I was planning on staying away from her anyway. If she plans on being this difficult in the future after we get married, then I guess it's best for both of us to have no contact at all. This is all my fiancé told me after returning home, and I told him that even if his mother decides not to speak to me, I am perfectly fine with that. In fact, I would prefer it because I don't want to talk to her or have anything to do with her. She is a very difficult person, and as I said, I don't owe her anything. I told her that if she really wants to, we can invite her to the wedding, but she will have to stay away from me throughout the ceremony. And when we have children, she can spend time with them, but I don't want to have any direct interaction with her because she is toxic. I don't like her, and that's it. He replied that everything I had said was completely justified, and that was the end of the conversation. We didn't argue about it. I know he has responsibilities towards his mother, but I really appreciate that he doesn't let that interfere with our relationship. I'm lucky to have him, and so is Sharon. If only she could realize that instead of constantly taking everything for granted. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since my last update, and we've had virtually no contact with Sharon for the last 2 weeks. Yesterday, out of sheer concern and anxiety, my fiancé decided to visit her because it was quite unusual for her not to contact him for such a long time. He had been waiting for her to call, either for him to visit her or to apologize to me, but she said absolutely nothing, and there was complete silence on her part. So he visited her yesterday, and, just like last time, she refused to let him in. This time she was firmer, and told him that last time she had softened a little because she didn't want to lose her son, but after thinking about the situation over the last few weeks, she couldn't believe that he had really tried to manipulate her into apologizing to me when I didn't deserve it at all. He didn't understand what she was referring to, so she reminded him that he had said that if she didn't apologize, he wouldn't be able to attend our wedding or meet his grandchildren when they were born, just because he didn't have a good relationship with me. She said that was manipulation and gaslighting to make him apologize to me when in fact I had created all this trouble. He said that it was now clear that he had become my puppet and no longer respected his own mother, which was why he had insisted that she humiliate herself and apologize when it was she who had been disrespected. He said that he had had enough time to reflect on everything that had happened, and now he was not falling for her manipulation. He asked her to leave because she had decided that she wanted nothing more to do with him. She declared that she had enough money to support herself and that she was a dignified person. She didn't need to depend on her son to receive crumbs of affection and love. She could survive perfectly well without anyone else, and, given that he had decided that I was more important to him than his own mother, who had done so much for him, she was perfectly willing to let him go. My fiancé was very surprised. He didn't expect this, but when he realized that I was serious, he finally exploded. It doesn't surprise me. This has been coming for a long time, because even the most patient man has his limits. He started to shout at her and told her that for years he had put up with her irrational behavior, her outbursts of anger, and the horrible things she said to him. Although they had argued, he had always tried to reconcile because he knew that she had sacrificed a lot for him and he couldn't ignore that, mainly because she wouldn't let him. He had always tried to be a good son and had tried to remember that everything he had achieved in his life had been thanks to his mother. He had really done his best, but as she had decided she no longer needed him, she told him that it was finally time to say goodbye because he too had finished. He didn't know her anything else, and if she didn't want to talk to him, maybe it was best for both of them never to communicate again because he was exhausted. He had tried again and again to explain that this kind of behavior would get him nowhere with his family or friends, but she had never bothered to listen to him, and now she had lost the only person who had always tried to stay by her side. He told her that he definitely chose me because I truly loved him and didn't hurt him like she had. I respected his boundaries, I respected him as a person, and I truly cared about him. I didn't constantly try to control and manipulate him like she did. I assured him that he would continue to choose me and that he was happy that I was part of his life because thanks to me, he no longer had to deal with her. Now, for the rest of her days, she could stay alone in that house and continue to play the victim because he was done with this relationship. After saying this, he left. His mother didn't even try to open the door to apologize, so clearly she was finished too. If she'd rather hold on to her anger and lose her son, that's her decision, but I'm very happy that my fiancé has finally cut ties because I think that, despite all her efforts, she never valued him, and this is good for him. He needed it. I'm proud of him, and I know he will be affected for a while, but in the long run it's for the best. Update 4. Hello everyone. It's been 6 months since my last update, and earlier this week my fiancé and I finally got married. We had a beautiful ceremony. Everything went according to plan, and we are really happy with the result. His mother didn't attend. She wasn't even invited, and in the last 6 months we haven't spoken to her once. The last we heard, she sent my now husband an email about 4 or 5 months ago informing him that she had changed her will and now he would receive nothing. She had basically disinherited him and left most of her possessions to charity. I guess she expected him to reach out after that and apologize, but he didn't even care. For a couple of months after he stopped talking to his mother, he was initially a bit sad. However, over time, he seemed to be happier, even more than he used to be. He told me that he is really glad that he and his mother no longer communicate because, despite everything she had done for him in the past, in the end it didn't make any difference, as it really did make his life miserable in the last few years. She was a rather bitter and unhappy person, and perhaps couldn't bear that her son tried to be happy. That's why she tried so hard to make him unhappy too, and now that they no longer speak, now that he is no longer obliged to visit her every month, he feels much calmer, and I am really happy for him. We are both delighted to have started this new chapter of our lives on the right foot and hope to stay as happy as we are now for the rest of our lives.